Thank you, President. I'm going to move an amendment to this motion, which I'll read out now. After the final paragraph, insert the following temporary orders. 2. Remote participation. Any member may request permission of the President to attend the sitting of the House via audiovisual link. 2. The President will grant permission to a member to attend the sitting of the House via audiovisual link where the President believes there are sufficient grounds to do so. 3. The Chair must be satisfied that the audiovisual link is of sufficient quality to A. Verify the identity of the member attending via the link, and B. Enable meaningful participation in the sitting by the member. 4. A member attending the sitting of the House via audiovisual link will be permitted to contribute to all items of business scheduled during that sitting day by either speaking to the item when they have the call, or B. Providing that their contribution electronically to the clerk by email to Council Parliament Vic.gov.au by the adjournment of the House for incorporation in Hansard. 5. In relation to material submitted for incorporation in Hansard, the House authorises and requires matters to be published in Hansard at the point in the proceedings order of business that the item would have occurred. B. All incorporated material be published in Hansard. To be published in Hansard is subject to the Hansard editorial policy. And C. If any submitted incorporated material contains unbecoming expressions or does not comply with the rules of debate, the President may direct that the matter be removed or amended before it is published. 3. Remote voting. In addition to assisting temporary arrangements for divisions, members participating remotely when a question is put, 1. May voice their vote with the ayes or the noes and call for a division when applicable, and 2. Must vote in a division if they are connected to the proceedings by audiovisual link, and 3. Will be counted in a division by physically standing when requested to do so by the Chair for the ayes or noes. The Chair will ask any member voting in this manner to confirm their vote verbally at the time of counting. Yep. Right. I'll speak to that. Parliament is an essential check on government. When the government has assumed extraordinary powers, it is much more important for the Parliament to sit to scrutinise the use of those powers. Today, the opposition and the crossbench are petitioning our government to continue to operate Parliament. Our entire state has been told that it must work from home, but the government feels that this Parliament is an exception. There are some technological challenges to overcome, but they are nothing new. It's been 50 years since we put a man on the moon. Running a Parliament remotely is easy. Requiring members to always be physically present isn't just a COVID-19 problem. This year, several parliamentarians have had a newborn while in office. Life happens, and it's not that difficult to accommodate it. Parliament should sit in person where possible, but should reserve the capability to sit remotely when necessary. We're not asking anything of this government that is not also being asked of every Victorian. When I told the Northern Victorian community I was coming down to Melbourne for Parliament last sitting, the number one response I got was, "Why can't you do it remotely? We all are." Why not indeed? Because the government have not bothered to put the process in place, and the opposition has gone along with that. Every business able to work remotely has been asked to do so. Despite the challenges, Victorians have set up their home offices and shifted to Zoom meetings and conference calls. It's not too much to ask that the Parliament do the same. Our job in this place is to ensure that voices of constituents are heard, to ensure that government is doing what it has been asked to do by the people. The continued operation of Parliament is a recognition that in a democracy, the people are in charge. Instead, this government has done what it can to obstruct democracy. Members of the crossbench have been kept in the dark about sitting arrangements. We've been chided for doing the work that we've been elected to do. The government has pretended that parliamentarians are in the wrong for attending against the advice of the Chief Health Officer. Advice which is counter to the Cho's advice to many other workers who are travelling to and from Melbourne, but advice that does suit the government fine. If attending Parliament is dangerous, the solution is to implement remote sittings, not to seize the opportunity to operate without overview, to prevent your political opponents from doing their job. This crossbench has been elected because a third of Victorians do not trust the two major parties. We are not here to represent the Chief Health Officer, we are here to represent our constituents. Instead of trying to accommodate democracy, this government has tried to stifle it. Aside from making no effort to enable Parliament to run remotely, this government has required regional MPs to quarantine after travelling to Melbourne, has truncated sitting weeks to a single day and has made it standard practice to give less than a day's notice of changes to the sitting schedule. That's not the behaviour of a government that believes in democracy. This government has demonstrated it has no interest in the democratic process or in governing by consent. You have used back-to-back declarations of emergency and disaster to exercise an unprecedented level of control over Victorians. I am not alone in thinking that these lockdowns are excessive. I don't see the value in a curfew. I don't see the value in the strict border closure or locking down regional areas where there is no virus. And I don't see the value in denying access to bushlands, to closing the national parks. The government has used fear and force to implement COVID restrictions when other countries have proved that's not necessary. Choice, not force. Now, persuasion, not force. You don't need the police to force people to do things if you tell them it's a good idea. Now, more than ever, we need our Parliament to hold our government to account. We need our government to govern by consent, not by fiat and not by decree. We have only two options. Either MPs continue to attend Parliament and continue to risk bringing COVID to their electorates, or we work out how to run the Parliament remotely. To that end, I've drafted these temporary changes to the standing orders that will allow parliamentarians to do their job remotely. There might be constitutional issues, yes. Yes, there might. And there's only one way we're going to find out if there are or not. And that is to pass these orders and then, if necessary, test them. We can't sit around and wait to see that it'll magically resolve itself. If there is a constitutional problem, it must go to the court to be solved. I hear the government say they'd like to pass something the next sitting when they sort out the issue. So they'll make regional MPs travel a third time to Parliament to pass orders so that they don't have to travel to Parliament. It doesn't just make a mockery of the CHO's advice, it's ludicrous. This should have been passed last sitting, not being kicked down the road today again. The government could have done this, but it chose not to. I ask the people of Victoria to reflect on this fact. Why does the government choose to shut the Parliament, to shut down scrutiny, instead of allowing MPs to sit remotely? I commend the amendment to the House.
Thank you. Members can